Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
I am Tyler.
Oh, and today we are joined by Travis Stockstill. Man, this guy over here is a butcher. We've been chatting it up for about an hour now, and this guy is an amazing butcher, and he's actually the director of operations at Jack Mountain Meats, which is crazy because
our homies,
our buddies, and we had no idea, and we just found you on Instagram. I was like, this guy looks like a dope butcher who's done some podcasts. He knows what he's doing, and I'm so excited to have him here today. Travis, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for the accolades. I am very modest, so it is kind of awkward.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Bro, no, you should not be modest with all of the stuff that you've done, all the animals that you have butchered, been selected to the US Butchery Team, and so much more in between. But give us a little rundown of kind of your background and what got you into butchering to here right now.
Okay. So, to be clear, it's a career that I never thought I was going to do. My great-grandfather was a butcher. My brother's a butcher. I met my wife in a butcher shop. My brother-in-law's a butcher.
How did you not put it together then?
And then, but I was a journeyman tile setter for a couple years, and then the 2008 economy did what it did, and I needed a job after traveling abroad and in the States. My brother was managing a kill floor in Vermont. He said, hey, give me 3 years of life, I'll make you into a career butcher. You can get a job anywhere. I moved to Vermont, literally started harvesting and dispatching my first day. I stayed there for 2 years, moved to LA, worked at a high-end butcher shop. That's where I met my wife. Helped open up a hog processing plant in San Diego, moved up here, helped a guy get established with a mobile slaughter unit up near Linden, and then worked at Jack Mountain as the production manager, got a job at another local cut and wrap facility that harvested for farmers. We had like 100 plus farmers as part of our co-op. Ooh. So working with that, every single animals cut differently.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, and then I was looking for a change and reached out to Travis and Cian, or they reached out to me. I don't know which one, but and they're the owners at Jack Mountain, and I made the move, and it's a smart move. I like it. There's more work-life balance. I enjoy the work a lot better. There's a built-in team versus other places I've worked where, being the general manager, you're also the janitor. You're also the maintenance guy. You're also you do everything, and then you realize you step back at the end of the week, and you're like, wow, I really haven't seen my kids since Sunday.
Yeah, it's a familiar story.
Yeah.
So that's like the cliff notes of me.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you've done over 75,000 animals. That's crazy.
That's a large number.
That's a lot, man.
It's just over the years. Yeah. A lot of that was in Vermont. I'd say like 90% of it. Mm-hmm. And then and it was hogs, beef, lamb, goat, poultry, some alpacas, a camel, and a guy I had a guy that I was friends with that worked with, who taught me so much, fourth generation butcher, also had a petting zoo. So and animals, you can't.
Turn it off if you have kids.
Yeah, you can't pet them forever.
No.
So,
wow.
Hold up. How do you butcher a camel?
Same way you do like a really large lamb, and then you would we had to use a beef cradle, but you seam it out, knock the legs off, and then hang it, and then we used a hide puller on it, and then the hump itself is like really fatty.
Yeah, what is in the hump? What is in the camel hump?
It's just straight collagen, right?
Yeah, it's just like it's like gelatinous, and it holds a lot of water. and things like that. I will say I did not eat the camel, but I've eaten the pacas and llamas before.
Yeah.
How's that?
Not great. And I'm not saying
Like-
it may
like-
not be great for
like-
the general listener.
Just kind of like blah tasting, bland, or was it gamey?
I would say it's gamey.
Yeah.
And tough because, again, these are petting zoo animals. So they're
Probably stressed.
yeah, they're actually pretty calm because they're used to people and you can pet them right before you
that,
dispatch
yeah.
them. But they're older is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they're older, okay.
And so,
Yeah.
they're every animal, be it a working animal, an ox, be it a dairy animal, being a petting zoo animal, or animals that are raised for beef or any other outlets, they should be utilized at the end of that life to help nourishment continue.
For
It's
sure.
I've met people who make more money on pelts than they do on lamb meat, and but they still want to get it processed, and I encourage people to do that versus, I just think it's kind of disrespectful to not, and that's something that, like, with morals and everything, like, it's the only thing I think about.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Utilizing the whole thing.
Use the whole animal, of course.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, I remember when I was threatened by ELF, the Animal Liberation Front.
Oh, God.
Working in Vermont because we were processing 2 working ox for the university, and they found out, threatened to firebomb us, Homeland Security, everything like that. So
Stop.
yeah, so people are
Jesus.
passionate
Yeah.
about animals, and I feel I'm passionate on the other end.
Utilizing it.
Yeah,
and
and
for good protein, good meat, good
Yeah.
calories.
And I see this, and it's like, well, were you guys upset when they're working animals, and you want them to be dispatched in vain and not continue what this animal is meant to do?
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a big. Oh yeah, that's a big combo. I
Some
love it, though.
ethics and morals.
Hey man, I understand it, but let's get into. I really want. I'm so excited here because I really want the ranchers and the consumers to get a lot of value out of this. And we talked to a lot of ranchers, and not a lot of them know exactly the whole butcher process. So I kind of want to get into a few things. So when a whole beef carcass comes into the shop, man, what's the first thing that you are looking at?
so a lot of times, because there's different breeding practices or feeding practices, even in the same breed line, right? So you could have like American lowline Aberdeen look beautiful from one rancher and not be the best from another, right?
Okay.
Or you could see Wagyu, where it's like the image that people have of Wagyu is beautiful, marbled, showcase looking beautiful, but there's also, you need cows to do that. And cows have a longer life expectancy until they stop, till they've given so many births.
Okay.
And then to utilize that, you're not going to have hardly any intermuscular fat, but you're going to see that, that softer back fat. So when I see a carcass come in, and a lot of times the owner of the animal or the farmer will give me a cut sheet, and I'll look over that cut sheet, and I could certainly cut it that way, but sometimes it may not be most desirable, because as cows get older, or beef in general sometimes get older, their muscles aren't as fused together. They get looser. They get, the fat may be snotty. And, but I'll tell them, if they ask, a lot of farmers will be like, hey, can you let me know what my beef looks like? Is it going to make good ribeyes? Should I grind it? What cuts are worth getting? And they'll tell me, like, okay, I can make, my margin needs to be on stir fry and stew. If I can't get the cuts, can you salvage anything? And a lot of times it'll be like the obvious leaner cuts, like I'll recommend tenderloin, top sirloin, and then I say, okay, your rib doesn't look what people are going to think is Wagyu when they see the package, but I could, denude it, remove the bones, and make it into like, and I would just call it, boneless rib roast or a patio roast, where it's just everything except for that center muscle, or make a denude a New York where I remove the entire fat cap and then just make it into a boneless loin roast. And a lot of times they may put that into market. A lot of times they may just give that to friends and family, but they'll still be able to make money on the grind, the stew, the stir fry, the tenderloin, etc.
Yeah.
You know, when you have an animal that you want to get the best yield at, we're talking about knuckle bones, we're talking about soup bones, we're talking about split marrow bones.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
and then when you get dairy cows like a Dexter or a Holstein, you know, they are aesthetically or visually what some people would say are the worst. And because they're brought to harvest when they plateau on they're producing milk that they're no longer profitable. And and it sucks to say that, but it kind of is what it is.
Right.
And then it's 100% grind. Or I used to do like 50 organic cows, certified organic, and they would want to take the rounds, and they had a certified beef jerky that they did. So we would save the rounds, send them to further processing, but a lot of it was grind. So when you see organic grind, it most likely is from a dairy cow.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And that's why it's like 99% lean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. And, you know, talking about Wagyu, we love talking Wagyu beef over here. And you've done, I mean, when we were talking on the phone, you've done so many different types of cattle. You were naming off things that I've never even heard of. But I wanted you to kind of explain or talk about maybe some of the difference in butchering like a whole Wagyu cow versus conventional beef.
Yeah. So, again, even with Wagyu, talking about cows and animals raised for beef, there's different things that you see. You know, you don't want to get the money cuts out of a cow. But when it comes to what you can get as far as added value that may not show up in conventional beef, is we're talking about like the boneless short ribs. We're talking about that chuck plate. We're talking about that Denver. We're talking about the things that just look beautiful, sliced thin, that you could grill quick with the melting point of Wagyu being lower, and it just melts in your mouth. You know, there's been times where I've just cut something thin, sprinkled salt on it, and just ate it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right there with
I
you.
love that butcher trick. Man.
Right there
I
with
love
you.
it.
And so you wouldn't cut it where it's like a Wagyu chuck roast, right? Because what's it going to look like when you forgot the word. I suffered a TBI a couple years ago, so I get word loss sometimes.
Yeah, dude. No worries, man.
Happens.
Yeah. So it may not be the best braising cut because you're going to end up with a huge fat layer on top of it.
Totally.
Okay.
But what would let's now get chuck eyes. Let's now pull the Denver. Let's see what else we could do with the chuck to add value.
Yeah.
Is it going to be chuck steaks? And if you start getting in chuck
those.
steaks, does this animal hold up with this intermuscular fat and seam fat that is going to present well?
Yes.
Of course, you're going to have your ribeyes, you're going to have your New Yorks and everything like that.
Yeah.
But in your tenderloins, but it's about thickness at that point. Do you want like a baseball, size tenderloin piece, or do you want something that's like an inch and a half?
Right.
Okay.
And then with the shanks, it's like, cut them into ossobuco to make a braising dish. You can't like hot sear a shank, but or you could grind it.
You deep fry it.
Yeah.
You could turn the cuts into added value. You could, try to make a sausage, but you got to be really conscientious of how much fat you put in there.
Fat content.
Yeah. And same with a hot dog.
Yeah.
But there's more, communication and more specialty cutting, and versus what would be like a standard cut sheet and a cut and wrap.
Yeah.
And then the Wagyu producers are willing to pay that extra because they know their margin is so good. Like I've worked with people who sell 10-pound boxes of grind Wagyu for like $300+.
Totally.
Wow. That's some good Wagyu.
Yeah.
A big thing that we always run into in every rancher, I mean, the whole beef industry, right, is the grind. Like how much of the cow is set up for grind, like a lot of it, right? And with Wagyu, we're talking about the back end of the cow. So how do we utilize more of those cuts? I mean, do you see a difference in the top round, bottom round, eye of round? Is there anything on the back end that maybe is would be a better roast with Wagyu, or any unique muscle that you've seen in maybe a Wagyu cow that would be different from conventional?
Yeah. So the average carcass broken into primals is going to produce 120 pounds of grind, and that's just getting it into primals to be further processed.
Okay.
When you start looking at the rounds and stuff, it's like, so a lot of people think the bottom round is tough. Like you could only, turn it into stir fry stew meat, which I always think is weird that people want to turn stew meat out of the leanest cut because it's going to be a dry stew.
Right?
But like the bottom round, or the picanha, is the continuation of the bottom round.
Okay.
So you off that first end, when you had that separating straight break, when you take the drop loin off, you could still get like another 2 inches of quality off of that bottom round because it's the same muscle as the picanha.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you start, you could get super esoteric into it when it comes to the top round. You could pull that cap off. I worked at a place that would pull the cap off. And there's this little muscle that's about 4 inches by 2 inches, and we would call that the Brit tender. And
Brit tender.
Yeah, and it weighs like half a pound. But that's a amazing, just small roast or small like cut for an individual.
Tender?
Yeah, it is tender. And then you could remove and then with the cap, I would always butterfly it completely and almost make like a carne asada cut, or like a nice grilling cut, because the cap's also tender. You could.
What do you mean the cap?
The top round cap.
The top round cap. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you could separate the top round, and you could get like your pub steaks, because there's a natural seam in the top round. Some people call it the eye of the top round. I don't, because that's dumb.
Hey, don't write that down.
And then, so it's the pub roast, and you can make pub steaks, and cut them like an inch and a quarter. And then you could either make, then the rest of it, what do? Do you cut it thin for the grill? Do you cut it thin for stir fry? Do you cut it thin so we could just put salt on it and eat it? So that's where the questions really get. And or do you turn it into jerky, right?
Yeah.
And you can't make London broils out of that piece, because it's going to be, too fatty. It may be too rich, and you normally don't see a lot thicker cuts when it comes to Wagyu. And then the eye round, I don't know, tartar. Yeah.
Carpaccio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I have seen some eye rounds from full blood Wagyu that look like
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I would
Crazy.
I should try to get my hands on some, because historically with the eye rounds, like, you could cut minute steaks or breakfast steaks, and even though it's a minute to cook, it's an hour to chew. So
Tougher than a $2 steak.
yeah, and you could also make cube steak, which goes through a cuber. You can make which is used for chicken fried steak.
Chicken fried steak.
Even though the original cut for chicken fried steak was a cross-cut flat iron top. Or
Is it
top
really?
blade, yeah.
Really?
And they ran it through a cuber because it has that big piece of gristle going through it.
Yep.
Man, I'm always trying to find something in the back end of the cow that's comparable to like a choice ribeye, because I think that's probably what sells a lot, right? When you go to the grocery store, a choice ribeye is probably one of the top things. So, I'm always asking people that, like, would it be like a London broil, like a London broil steak cut as like a steak, or is it top round? Like cut maybe a little bit thinner or something like that. I think like if you could figure that out, man.
Yeah, like
for the
a
industry.
couple inches off the point of the top round could be good, but the most tender part of the round itself, and we take away the knuckle, is going to be parts of the. Let me scratch that. I think I misspoke. The first couple inches of the point off the bottom round,
Okay.
are going to have rich in flavor because it's a continuation of the picanha. But when it comes to tenderness, the top round is more tender of any other pieces on the round. But to get, to do like a 1-for-1 swap out of the ribeye, it's either, you're not going to be able to get that rich and muscular fat, but cooked properly and cut properly, you could get the tenderness off of definitely the top round, and you can, but then there's like a hidden steak that's ultra lean in the shank, which is called the Merlot or the Velvet, and that's super lean, but it's also very tender. It's very good.
They're dope.
Yeah,
Merlot steaks are fucking awesome.
Yeah, and when I worked retail, this is a complete tangent, but every time I think of Merlot or Velvet, I remember this girl coming in and saying, "Do you have any Velvets?" And I was like, "Oh no, we're out because we're a whole Carcass. It's like we couldn't source like a whole box of them." And she's like, "Well, I'm menstruating. That's the only steak I need to replace my iron." So every time I go and cut that cut, that's immediately what comes to my mind.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's
the
true or
ladies.
backed by science at all.
We're going to have to look that up.
Okay, you're gonna put that on my list right now.
Dude, oh my gosh. It's funny though, when we're talking about all this stuff, we do want, people should know that when you're processing a cow, if you want all these steaks, right, it's going to cost more because it's going to take longer to go in there and cut into that top round and process it differently. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, because I could process one beef for a butcher case and I get maybe like 3 beef a week, and I'm artisanal, all that. I could put every single money cut in there, right? But when you're in a cut and wrap environment, you're getting paid per pound by the hour.
Yeah.
So you got to charge accordingly, because if you start breaking down those super esoteric cuts, like even getting the velvet or even getting the oyster or the spider steak or the cat's tongue or a true baseball steak or the terrace major, and then people don't know there's a terrace minor that mostly goes into grind. You have the
I
underblade.
just learned that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have the underblade steak, which is the Vegas strip steak, and I hate that name.
What's the underblade?
Underblade, so underneath the scapula, it almost looks like a third flat iron, and it has a piece of silver on it. So you remove it, and it's super lean, super tender, and it's the muscle that actually connects the teres minor to the teres major.
Wild.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. Like I talk about teres major is one of my favorite cuts of the whole animal. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me that when you talk about the chuck or the front end, those are huge working legs and muscles and everything. And it's generally everybody's like, oh, it's just everything's tough. Like flat iron's the second most tender cut in the animal, following the tenderloin, right?
Yeah.
You got Zabs in there, crazy tender, teres majors in there, Delmonico steaks. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's wild to me that the misconception of chuck is like, oh, that's a stew meat, it's a long cook, it's
Yeah.
a braise, it's a roast. There's so many gems in the shoulder to me.
Yeah, when when you look at like old school like custom cut and wraps, and they just take the whole chuck and just put it on a bandsaw and make giant chuck steaks. I'm like, dude, you got so many different muscles and so many different cooking methods to showcase that muscle specifically. How's that going to eat? Same with like someone putting a whole steamship on a bandsaw and just cutting steaks out of that. I just don't get it. And that's one way you can make more money, is just cross-cut an entire animal.
I guess.
Yeah, but
Jeez.
the whole point of what I do and what people like me for the most part do and should do is getting the customer what they want, explaining what is going to cost more, and instead of saying the entire animal's specialty cutting, you just charge it's just specialty cutting on this primal, and you charge the weight on that, because in this industry, margins are razor thin. As a butcher, I need to get a vig they need to get a vig when they sell it to the general public. So
Yeah, I mean, it's true, man. And so, we kind of talked about the chuck, but what part of the cow do you think is the most misunderstood?
So a lot of things that I don't really see is like the inside skirt. Like everyone does the outside skirt, but there's even the inside skirt, which is on the opposite of the navel, is also really good. A lot of people use it for carne asada or something like that. But when you quarter a beef, there's actually another 16 inches of that muscle going into the flank. So if you end up with a whole carcass, you could get your inside skirt to be about 3 feet long. Yeah.
Wow, really?
And it's great. A lot of popular things that I'm seeing now because of marketing, I guess, and buzzwords, is the bavette, which has always been sirloin flap.
Yep.
And and
Much sexier.
yeah, and for a lot of times that's what stores would make steak tips out of, right? You cut them, you cut the piece in thirds, and then you cut those pieces against the grain at about 1.5 inches or so, and they're delicious. Or if you want to make like true carne asada, then you cut it out of the bias and butterfly and have those beautiful pieces as well. Yeah. And I would educate people when they go to like a carniceria or to a butcher shop and they see someone advertising something as carne asada cut or something like that.
Ask them what it is.
Yeah, ask what it is, because a lot of places will make that out of the top round. I'm not saying it's bad or whatever, but if you want to have a good better mouth experience and a little bit more fat, then I would recommend it coming from the bavette.
Yeah.
Bavettes are great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Love a bavette.
big fans, man.
Talking about the Terrace Major, the Chuck Tenor, or whatever you want to call it, is I remember no one wanted those when I first got into the industry, and I was working with a Brazilian third-generation butcher, and he was teaching me how to break beef. And I was like, he showed me, and I was like, what's that? And he said, in a little bit broken English, he's like, that's a pocket steak. And I was like, what does that mean?
You put it in your pocket.
And he put it in his pocket.
That's a butcher's lunch right there.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Dude, I love that.
I'd have big pockets if I was in that shop.
Yeah.
Dude, I like this. This is for the consumers here. So if someone, wants to buy a whole or half beef, what should they ask their butcher?
They should always ask them what the animal looks like when it's on the rail before making their cut sheets, right? Okay. And a butcher should think beyond, I'm going to give them the easiest cut sheet. I've made TikTok videos about how a butcher could gaslight people into making the easiest cut sheet. And it's like, oh, do you want, I can't even remember. But it's like, oh, do you want a whole chuck? It's really nice. It's really great. It's bone in. It gives you that like caveman feel. No one wants that. But you should communicate with the grower or the end user if they're separated about, okay, this animal is beautiful, etc. I recommend, bone-in ribeyes. I recommend, the standard of New York tenderloins. I would do, steaks out of the top sirloin and, cross-cut shanks for braising. And if an animal's not looking that great, then, be honest. And it's hard to be because a lot of farmers, may take criticism not the best. But just be like, at the end of the day, when you're cutting something, the butcher should want it, one, to look aesthetically pleasing, because it's going to the consumer. First thing they do is shop with their eyes, and then ask themselves, would you eat this? Would you find a use for this? Yeah. Or would the general public, knowing what the general public I as a consumer is, would they eat it? Because obviously the three of us know that something that may not look aesthetically or may look leaner or may look different, we can find a use for it. Mm-hmm. And so it's having that conversation, and then because there's beef raised for beef out there, and you will cut that just like you would see in a retail case. Obviously, you're going to get more cuts than you would see in a retail case because they genuinely don't put cross-cut shanks. You don't see the flap in there. You don't see that full outside or inside skirt. You just see traditionally New York's, ribeyes, tenderloins, and top sirloins, and really nothing else.
Yeah.
And I don't need people coming at me and being like, "Oh, actually, in my case, we do this."
Right.
It's like I get it,
Yeah.
but I'm saying the average consumer who
typical.
who buys at what I would consider a commodity grocery store, and I'm not trying to shit on who buys there. I buy there because high quality, buzzword, ethical, humanely raised, organic, everything like that puts more money on it.
Certainly does.
Yeah.
No, it does.
So.
That's facts, man. And so, okay, let me ask you this though: how do great butchers really utilize the entire carcass? Because I want the ranchers to really understand from your perspective how to get the most out of a whole carcass.
Okay, so when I was on the team, the American Butcher Team, one of the things that they were, I didn't compete due to injury, but
That's crazy.
but for 3 years I trained in. But what you're judged on is your yield, right? And so so let's just go down, top to bottom of the carcass. Even though when I say top, that starts with the shank, which is,
Hanging that way.
Exactly.
So the shank, you get crosscut shanks, and then you get down to that femur. Then I would always canoe cut it. I think it's weird that people want pipe bones out of marrow bones. And then you have then next you'll move your knuckle, right? So there's 2 roasts there, and your silver side, which looks, is great for an audio medium, but it looks like a wedge that tapers down, and then you have the center of the knuckle, and you seam that out. You can make. I would encourage people to make steaks out of that. Also, full utilization depends on what cuts you're going to get. Depends on what time of year it is.
True.
Because are we cold? Are we inside? Do we want rich comfort food, braising, or is it grill season?
Yeah.
And if this is the one animal a family gets cut, I'm going to say get a mixture, right?
Yeah.
And so then moving down, so we took the knuckle off. Next to take off is the top round. You're going to take the top round, remove the cap, and now you could either stir fry, London broils, or steaks, right? Or stew meat. So I'd recommend steaks. I don't enjoy eating London broils. But also a good London broil where they grill and then cut it thin for sandwiches is delicious.
Yum.
I just don't do that at my house. I pay someone to do that for me. But if I'm gonna have also thinner, if I have
real restaurant podcast right here, guys.
But if I end up with some top round steaks. And then later at home, I'm like, oh shit, I want some stew meat. I can just open that up and cut some stew meat out of it.
Absolutely.
You can do it yourself pretty easy.
And then moving on to the top round, or we did the top round, moving on to the bottom round, the best roast out of that's going to be from the point, and then you got your center, then you got your flap. And I would get the point roast, and then there you can make what you call Swiss steaks, which is like a steak cooked in gravy. And I used to work with a guy that said I knew my wife wanted to leave me when she started cooking me Swiss steaks for dinner. And then the other, also with the bottom round, you could cook your chicken fried or get your chicken fried steak, run it through a cuber. You can make it, and if you don't have a cuber at home, which I imagine most people don't, just use a hand jacquard, right?
What's that?
It's like it has a bunch of needles on it, and you like slam it down that. And you can buy those a lot of places online. Just look up Jakar, and I won't tell you how to spell it because I'm dyslexic.
Nope, it's been a long time.
I think it's
G-U-I-C-A-R-D. G-U-I, I think.
We'll put a note in there.
Yeah.
And then I round is, again, you can cube it. You can make awful minute steaks. Mm-hmm. You could slice it thin. You could turn it into roast. I noticed a lot of people buy it who may be on a low fat diet or something, and then they braise it. And I've seen it done terribly, where it's incredibly dry, but I've also seen it done beautifully as well. Yeah. And then moving on, now we're down to your sirloin, and we're starting getting into cuts that can make money, right? Pull that cap off, have that picanha. And to me, a picanha is that whole triangle piece with the fat cap on. And then if you remove that fat cap, then to me, it becomes a culotte. And then if someone says different, you're wrong. I'm joking.
I like that. No,
that's
cool.
And then you're going to take your top sirloin. And growing up in Southern California, we had Santa Maria style tri-tip. But also when they were doing that, there was also Santa Maria style top block. So you take a whole top sirloin, cut it in half, and skew it and cook it like slow on a Santa Maria style cooker. True Santa Maria, I think, is red oak. And then, of course, with the tri-tip, I cringe every time I see tri-tip steaks because that's not how a tri-tip should be. It should be a roast, fat cap on, get the gland off the back. It should be cooked on a grill where, it's high heat, where you put your hand and you're like, okay, I can only keep my hand there for like a second. Yeah. And then start fat cap up 15 minutes, rotate it 15 minutes, then rotate it again, let rest. Santa Maria style is French garlic bread and sugared strawberries as your side.
Okay.
And that's
it's a meat sandwich.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Meat and bread.
Yeah. Growing up in Santa Barbara, it was not a party or a social event or anything during the summertime. And there was no tri-tip. Wow. Yeah. We'd hype out on people. So, yeah. What the fuck is this?
Get out of here.
Bullshit.
What is it, hamburgers?
Yeah.
I could eat that alone over the sink in my house.
I love it. Oh, that's good. Okay.
And then we're down to the short loin, right? And we had the tenderloin on the other side. If you ever dry age a whole drop loin, which is with the tenderloin in and the sirloin, top sirloin on, leave the suet in, it'll protect the tenderloin. Okay. But, I don't like Florentines, porterhouses. I think club steaks fall into it where it's both cuts on the same. Because again, like we talked about earlier with that big cross-cut chuck, but in a much smaller way, we have two different muscles that need special attention to make it turn out right. So I would take out the tenderloin, make that, I personally would cut it 2 inches or thicker. And then I would take the New York
strip.
Yeah, and just make New Yorks out of it with a 1/4 inch of fat, get that piece of gristle out of it. And then I would cut those at 1.5 inches or 1.25 to 1.5 inches. Okay. Now we're moving on to your flap or what people call your flank. I would remove the flank, remove the bavette, take the bavette, cut it into steak tips or cut it thin for carne asada. A flank steak, you can't really do anything else. Yep. So, and then the muscle, the continuation of the inside skirt, which is about 18 inches more in there. I take that out and also have that be what we just used to call flat meat. Yeah. And the flat meat includes the bavette, both skirts, that piece.
Okay.
Okay. And so take that out, cook it like you would for, how you would cook flat meat. fajitas. You know, I love fajitas. I can't get enough of fajitas.
Dude, tacos or fajitas.
I had fajitas last night.
I can have tacos or fajitas every day.
Hey, real quick before you keep going, difference between inside skirt and outside skirt.
So I always confuse which one's which. So I try to be.
It's opposite.
Yeah.
The inside skirt is higher on the animal. The outside skirt's lower on the animal.
So if I've been saying it wrong, whatever. So the inside skirt, or what is the diaphragm, right? So the reason it has membrane on either side before you peel it is because it's in there, and then separation from the lungs and separation from the intestinal tract.
Okay.
And then what connects it, then it connects to the hanging tender. And so then the inside or outside, whatever, the other one is on the, what is it, like rib tips or cartilage section of the navel. Yes. So you would remove that. It's gonna be easy to peel on the outside of that muscle, but it takes some work to be able to peel it nice on the other side. It's gonna be a little bit of knife assistance, and you got to be careful with both skirts that when you peel it, you don't want to rip it in half. And they're both, they have different textures and different tenderness between them, but if you cut them both thin, grill them, and do them as a fajitas or something you would use in strip steaks, or then it's by strip steaks I mean thin pieces, not actual strip. Right. Yeah, and it's gonna taste good. It's gonna be delicious, and then so that's part of the plate. And then what else you could get from the plate is which would be ribs 6, 7, 8. You could get English style short ribs. A lot of times I include the 9th rib in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And typically you don't want to do flanken or thin cut ribs out of those.
Okay.
Because it has more fat. And so when you make short ribs, braising, barbecue, whatever, that will render out. Quick sear, like flanken, you're going to be chewing a big piece of fat.
Is it flanken? I would say flanken.
Flanken.
I don't know.
We don't know. Okay.
Potato, bro.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, maybe there was like a, back in Vermont or something,
Depends on where you are in the country, I guess.
Yeah.
Sounds real pro.
And then on the other side of that, you have your navel. And the navel's what you would see a lot of people make beef bacon out of. You're going to see it's a traditional cut that's used for pastrami, right? And if you're not using it for added value, 99% of that will go into grind. Yeah.
Have you seen the what the boys are calling the toro? It's like the heart center of the navel. It's super thin, and it looks like a flank, kind of.
Yeah.
It's pretty rad, but you got to go through, 13 pounds or so and destroy the navel if you're not going to use it any other way, just to harvest that.
I know.
That meat.
And then from a cut and wrap, it's like, okay, at what point am I losing money on this?
Yeah.
I've seen it on, I think, pork. It's easier to get to as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, okay, we've done the plate. The ribeye, obviously, roasts or steaks. If I own half a beef, I'm gonna ask for half and half, right? Because I want some. Yeah, and I'm gonna want that roast for for Christmas or something, and
prime rib, baby.
Yeah, and I always do bone in, especially if I'm selling it, because it's margin for a completely tasteless bone, and then I would French it, cut the ribs off, tie them back on. So you don't have to deal with that after the roast is complete. I love standing rib roast. If you want to get super esoteric, I'll take out this for me only, and I don't I would never offer this to someone. I would take off the spinalis. I would tie that up. Like, that's literally my favorite piece. The
How are you gonna cook that?
So spinalis dorsae, I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to tie it, like, and it'll be like little medallions like that thick, and then I'll cut them. I've also cooked it as a whole roast, which is delicious. Yeah. And
Spinalis roast?
yeah. And the only time I could really get those is when you're dealing with those animals that are like grinders, and you talk to the producer like, hey, could I buy, I would say, could I buy this much to grind off of it? And then just cut that for myself.
Totally.
And now we're on to the chuck. Chuck, you have, first you're going to peel your top blade, or that's where you get your flat irons.
Patreon.
Yeah. And, it's delicious. I love a good flat iron. Take off that paddle bone, get your Vegas steak or the third flat iron or your blade steak out of there. That's another thing with meat. There's 20 different names for the same cuts, and when you talk to different people, you're trying to figure out what the fuck they're talking about.
Right. Which one are you?
Yeah.
Which verbiage are you looking for?
Yeah. Then you could get your 7-bone chuck roast, which would have that piece still on it, or you could get chuck steaks. You could get amazing braising cuts. You could process the chuck further down and still end up with a roast if you take the Denver off. Cut the first 3 inches and get that, get those chuck eyes out of there. To me, a real chuck eye doesn't have any other muscles than the actual lumbar. And
Just the eye.
yeah, just the pure eye.
How big is that usually? Just a small.
Just like a small piece like that. It's actually 2 different muscles. But I would take that.
Longissimus?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think so. Maybe.
I gotta call.
I had
We'll
a
call
doc.
Kevin.
And I would take that, leave it whole, and then just cook it like I would like a baseball size steak. Of course, you got your brisket. If you do anything other than keep it whole, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. Don't separate it into flaps or points or anything like that. If you want it over trimmed, I'm gonna secretly just be like, ugh.
There's nothing worse than getting that phone call. Like, can I get like 3 pounds of brisket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's
it's whole, bro.
I have people call me and say, "Can I just get the point?" I'm like, "The hell am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Who's gonna buy the flat?"
You can make, you make corned beef, you can make pastrami out of it,
Sure.
but also when you're doing cut and wrap, for me to actually do that in a cut and wrap status, I need like 400 pounds. Wow. And of course, I'll give recipes or whatever to the farmer on how they could actually do it. And then now you have your arm, or you could have your arm roast, which I think is dumb. You have your pectoral muscle as well, which you could leave that out, and most of the time it turns into grind.
Yeah.
And then you have your clod, right? And I would denude the clod, and it's pretty tender. And so if you actually seam it out, then you can make kebabs out of it. Or you can make what I've always called rancher steaks out
Ranch
of it.
steaks, baby.
Yeah.
We love
And
those.
then moving on, you have your teres major, your teres minor. Then you end up with your mock tender. Now, the mock tender is really tough. It also has a big piece of gristle in it. So you could actually seam it out like you would a flat iron. Okay. And then you could turn that into like little strips that you would grill or stew meat, or I see like people do mock tender roast, and I have no idea how you do that or why you would do that. I understand the concept, but
I'm envisioning that after cutting that many chuck rolls, envisioning that piece, and I was like,
yeah.
it just doesn't look like anything else either.
Yeah. So then your foreshank, again, cross-cut shanks, cut it into marrow bones, how you'd want. I wouldn't do an arm roast, and I think we went through the whole animal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, now we got oxtails, tongues,
Yeah,
cheeks,
Yeah.
lips, all that.
Wow.
I used to cook lips.
Really?
Yeah,
You gotta braise them for like 24 hours too.
looks awful.
This is pretty
In the
gnarly.
braise.
Yeah. I've taken a whole tongue, blanched it, peeled it, and then made tongue pastrami out of
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Same, dude.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
used to sell tongues. Yeah, dude.
I love
They
tongue.
were great,
Yeah.
man.
Language is where it's at.
Yeah, yeah. So we just had conversation with one of our buddies, River Valley Wagyu. He does grass-fed Wagyu, and we were talking about grass-fed. To me, it's always normally that bright yellow, but with his, it's not. It's like an eggshell cream, and so he doesn't think that all grass-fed. Well, it kind of depends on the region. We broke it down a lot, about like if it's
what kind of grass,
what kind of grass, and in what region you're in. Because if you don't feed grass consistently throughout the 12 months, maybe it doesn't get as yellow. But in your experience, when you see a grass-fed animal, is it always yellow?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I genuinely see it as yellow or having a yellow tinge. It's from the keratin that naturally occurs in grass.
Yep.
I could also see why it wouldn't, because, there's just like animals and breeds and things like that. There's so many different types of grass, and I can't name any of them besides crabgrass. But the one thing that farmers have said to me, and I believe, is to be a good farmer, you got to be a good grass grower.
Yeah,
because that's the first step. And so I imagine, because I have seen Wagyu or grass-fed meat, where I would, just based on my knowledge, I would be like, oh, this is obviously finished with grain or something, and then be completely wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the grass, there's a different flavor profile too, as well.
Definitely.
Like grass is going to have more of an earthy flavor. Some people describe it as gamey. I don't certainly think it's gamey, but it's, if you do a side-by-side comparison of commodity and grass that both have the same marbling structure, then the average consumer should be able to know. Grass-fed beef usually come from older animals, right? Because how are you going to? It's harder to get coverage on an animal you're going to bring to market versus finishing it on grain. Yeah. And then I want to make it very clear. Both ways can produce beautiful products. I don't think one way is morally superior than the other. I think that farmers and ranchers, do an amazing job with what they know for the most part. Yeah. And I enjoy both for different situations.
Same.
I love that, man. That's exactly what he says too, and it's cool to see that with what Andrew says. He's always like, I like both. I like grain finished and grass finished.
Totally.
It's almost for like a different day. And there's so many different nuances in beef, and that's why we've been really kind of diving into that discussion about grass-fed from Eastern Washington is going to be different from grain-fed in Texas versus grain-fed in Florida versus, grain-fed in just everywhere you go. I mean, grain-fed means so many different things, right? It's like, what is the local grain that they're using?
Yeah, right.
And so there's so many different nuances and flavors in beef. And what is your favorite maybe type or style of beef that you would maybe search out for?
I like so I think what we typically get at my work from Paul Clayman's over at Pure Country, his beef are great, right?
Barley finished.
Yeah, barley finished. Yeah, and again, talking about what grain are they finishing on, right? Alfalfa, I think, is considered a grain.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. Someone look that up. Not me.
Fact check.
But they... so I love his stuff with the barley finish. I've also know other...
So good.
Yeah. I've had pork with avocado finish where the fat's like creamy. And like, it wasn't intentional. These pork got into a place where there was avocados. And the fat was like 2 inches thick.
I want to try that.
Yeah. And like, my favorite profile is I really like dry age ground beef, right? Because you get at 21 day. So people generally hang beef for 2 weeks. Your proteins don't start denuding until till that time. So you really didn't do anything except for slightly change the profile, but your mouthfeel will be the same. At 21 weeks or 21 days, you start seeing the texture change, right? Because the proteins are stripped, they're denuded, as we call, and then you have less water. So when you slaughter an animal, and the next day you're losing 7 to 8% of water just in that overnight period, in that first 24 hours, and then you're going to lose an additional like 6% between 2 weeks and that slaughter, on top of that 8% you already lost. And then as you go longer, the water activity is going to get lower, and then you start seeing the muscles start changing the profile. So if you were to take a beef as like 100% flavor, right, and now we reduce the water by 20 or so percent during that time, then that's 20% more flavor of the beef that you're tasting. And then with that proteins being stripped, and you get dry age, and especially with Paul's beef, it's not overpowering. It doesn't have like a super earthy flavor, and it doesn't have what people most commonly call wrong a gamey flavor. But it has an amazing mouthfeel. Because how many times have we eaten ground beef and there's like little chunks in there and you go, ugh.
Totally.
Yeah, but this, it's like cream. It's like, it has the nice sear on top from like a burger, and then you bite into it, and it's just like eating into like an amazing
chopstick.
Yeah.
Man, I like that. I like that dry aged math, man. That's the math I can get behind.
We were just in Nashville for CattleCon.
CattleCon.
And I was cooking how many different?
About 100 steaks.
100 steaks.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 days.
In 2 days on one pan.
How was that? All the same cut or different cut?
All different cuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was fun, but what I was going to say is that one of the steaks we tasted had this very sweet caramely finish to it. And I talked to the grower, and they were like, yeah, we mix molasses into our finishing feed, and you could totally taste it.
Oh,
The
wow.
different nuances, man.
It was wild.
Wow, man. Yeah, that was an eye-opening experience, seeing all those different steaks, cooking. It was really crazy, as Tyler was saying. He was cooking all of them, and they all cooked differently because they're all from different areas in the United States. So that's why, like, different grasses, different finishes, different raisins,
climates.
different climates. That's exactly right.
The very last entry was like 10 ribeyes, and I've been cooking for 2 days straight.
Yeah.
And the pan was totally different. The way the muscle seared was totally different. I had to jack the heat up like another 90 degrees more just to get a good. It's just weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, because that's all got to do with feed and finish and how they're raised, right?
Yeah. I've always said, like, butchers don't want to be chefs. Like, like, my wife does most of the cooking at my house, not because of like chauvinistic gender roles or anything like that. It's because she's just better at it than me.
Totally, man. Hey, what are your top 3 best value cuts for consumers?
Ugh. If we're talking about added value, it would be like cured and smoked products like that.
Yeah.
But
like they walk into a butcher shop and they have $30, $40, and they want to get like 2 or 3 cool things. What would you
3 or 2. Yeah. So ribeye is like one of my favorite cuts, but it's got to be close to the chuck end.
Yep.
Like if I'm eating ribeye or something like that, I'm the first one to just be like, like grab that chuck end piece, because it has a better cap on it. But if ribeyes are like most expensive, I'd ask like, okay, you have $30 or $40. Do you want like meat for one meal, or do you want meat that could get a little longer, or get you a little through? And then at that point you start talking about stir fry, ground. The best cuts you could get around that price point would be sirloin tips. I would recommend, if they want something that's just like, hey, I'm just having this a nice dinner for me and myself, or me and my partner, I would say, 2 ribeyes. But then they may look at that and be like, that's way too much meat. Then at that point, I'd be like, okay, maybe a couple New Yorks or strip steaks. And then if they, that's too fatty, that, then we're getting to the top sirloin and, possibly tenderloin. Or, a lot of times I have taken a porterhouse and because someone's like, well, I like lean, but my husband likes this, and then I'll just separate the 2 muscles for him right there at the counter. So it's really trying to understand what they're trying to achieve. And then they're like, hey, I just need enough meat for the week. I do just a lot of like crock pot dishes or a lot of quick things like that. Then it'd be like, okay, let me get you a section of a chuck. I could cube it up for you. But every single small butcher shop, what they want to sell you is ground beef because they had the most of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit earlier about, the velvet, the spiders, all the oyster, all these different cuts that there's only 2 of on an animal. And you put those in your case and people aren't going to buy it because it's so foreign to them. But at that point, I always call them icebreaker cuts because then it gets the conversation started.
Yes.
And they'll be like, oh, wow. And then you have a dialogue. And another thing is when I worked at a retail, people would come in with a recipe. And a lot of people hate that. I think I was on the end of, I wasn't stoked about it. But if you're out of it, then, okay, what could I see what the recipe is? Could I see if this is something that's an oven roast? Could I see if this is a, something that's braising? We may not have that, but a good retail cutter should be able to offer a substitution.
Totally. What are your thoughts on sous vide?
I like sous. I have a sous vide that I never use, but I've had great things coming out of a sous vide. I personally get weirded out by what packaging they use, and I'm scared of forever plastics.
It's true.
But I've had amazing. I typically don't like tenderloin. Because it's lean, it has no flavor because it's lean. But I've had amazing sous vide tenderloin where I'm just like, wow, this is really good. They put like compound butter in it during the process and then sear it at the end.
Okay.
One of my neighbors, he always talks to me about meat, and he's like, I'm kind of a meat guy myself, and I don't want to be like, and then he makes a really good sous vide brisket. Right.
That's great.
So it gets it.
Dude.
So
How long does that take?
it takes him 3 days, and then he gets it so it's not quite falling apart. But then he finishes it on a smoker.
Cool.
But he has so much time invested in that. Yeah. But I only show up when he texts me and say, "Hey, do you want this?"
Ready? Okay.
It's coming off the smoker.
Yeah. And another thing I've done for him, Kirk. I don't know what he does besides have money, but he picked up a chuck from Cash and Carry. It'll never be U.S. Foods. It's always Cash and Carry.
Cash and Carry.
Yeah, and I've gone over there and shown him like, okay, these are the muscles you could pull off of this here at home, and been like, and he loves it. And I find a lot of people love just learning little things about that, because there are cuts like that people could save money on if they do it at home.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we taught that. Tyler taught that how to break down a whole chuck roll.
Chuck roll, tenderloins.
Yeah, clean
Because
your tenderloin.
the people that love tenderloins, and they're going to go to the store and buy 2 8-ounce tenderloins for $65.
Yeah.
You could go and get a whole tenderloin for $100.
Yeah.
And clean it up yourself and have,
Yeah.
12 steaks.
Yeah. I encourage people out there to buy export ribs or buy pismos, and then like when peeling a tenderloin, it may sound weird, but you actually, when removing that silver, you actually need a little bit dollar knife, because otherwise you're going to just cut right through it.
Yeah.
And then, they could have their center cut tenderloin.
Chateaubriand.
Yeah.
Dude, I hope more people do that, so then more people really realize that it's a big muscle, and if you just want that Chateaubriand, like, what are you going to do with the rest, right? I mean, the rest is still really good.
3 more pounds.
But from a butcher's standpoint, too, it's like kind of hard to, get rid of the rest. 'Cause it's not the beautiful, big, thick tenderloins that everybody wants to buy. So what would you do if someone buys that Chateaubriand and then you stuck with the rest? What are you doing with it?
Before I get remove the Chateaubriand, I would the tail. I hate tenderloin tails, but I would cut
steak tips.
So when it tapers down, I would cut it halfway in the taper, fold that tail underneath, and then I would truss it at the tip.
Like a steak.
Yeah, and have it like a steak.
Okay.
And then with that, to have it, stay a little bit better, wrap it in some strips of bacon. And then the head of the tenderloin, I would truss it too. So if you cook it as a steak, those muscles aren't going to separate. You can separate those muscles as well, and then cook them differently. Yeah. Then I've actually, I was working retail, and we would case the chain. We would clean up the tenderloin chain and fold it, truss it, and it'd be about 4 inches long and 1.5 inches thick.
What do you mean by truss it?
Tie
it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't. Regional, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's trussing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I knew that. I just want to break it down.
Oh, sorry.
For the listeners at home.
Out there.
And then there's like, want to get really into it, you could do a snap knot, a box knot. You could do a lattice lace on it. So.
Sexy.
Yeah. One thing when I tried out for the team, they asked me how many different knots I knew, and then they had me truss an entire tenderloin, and my knots all had to be in the same position.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And after years and years of doing that, it's easy. Even though I was at my house,
it's a lot of blisters.
Yeah. I was at my house, and blisters right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to tie a ribeye for like Easter or something, and I completely forgot how to truss something, and I was like, oh shit. And I blame it on my head injury, but
I have one knot, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Okay.
One good knot.
I've got one rose tie, and I've got one knot that I know, and it's your classic slip knot, but I do it completely different than other people.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, but like, you want to use a box knot on a tenderloin because a snap knot, you're gonna like dig into it, right?
So tender.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could do it with a snap knot, but
Accolades.
Yeah, I like that, man. Well, that's why also, since we've been smoking here at the restaurant, I think that smoking is such a great way to like utilize some of those other big cuts, right? Just that slow smoke. You can take the head of the tenderloin and smoke the hell out of that too.
Yeah.
And that's just such a good way. I think a lot of people, smoking is really picking up now. I think a lot of people, even if they got the Traegers and all that kind of stuff, it's still a really good useful tool to take some of those larger cuts and just break them down slower. Because I think sometimes it's even less intimidating than a braise. When people talking about, if you're not a chef, people are like, oh, a braise.
I feel like I need to make
stuff.
this guy my smoked tri-tip now.
Oh, dude,
nice.
Tyler does the best smoked tri-tip, bro. Oh my god.
I love smoked meats, right?
Yeah.
And I'm friends with Jess Prowse. I don't know if you guys know her.
What?
Hardcore carnivore.
Yeah, I know that name on probably from Instagram.
But she's given me recipes, and I'll text her and be like, I have this, but I love smoking a whole chuck and cross plate where you get those Flunken style ribs out of. And I like the boat method, as people call it, and where I cover it for like an hour, uncover it, then cover it again with tinfoil. I have a Traeger.
Yep. Dude, I know it's easy though. It is easy for people, like because it's instead of like the crazy applewood smoker we got over there, like
it's a weekend warrior tool.
It's a good tool for people like that. But yeah,
But at my work, we have 1,000-pound smoker and then 2 500-pound smokers.
jeez,
No, 600 pounds.
yeah,
I've got a 2,000-pound smoker for sale.
You do?
got you a deal.
Maybe. When you buy big smokers like that, most of your money go into plumbing and exhaust systems.
Yeah,
Dude, and then getting them up on the patio here too.
Yeah.
that was a big day.
That was a big day.
Jim should have been here for that.
I know. I wish we had
We had a lot of footage of follies and bloopers.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Jeez. Well, hey, I like this question here, man. What's the most surprising thing you've ever found when breaking down a carcass?
Like good surprising?
Either way. Either way. Yeah. Good or bad.
I mean, for me, it's like when you find weird glands and it's like, what is that thing?
Yeah, so like on older animals, you'll see glands, just like on people, pretty much in the same place in the neck when you get a cold, or when you have a STD and you feel it like in your crotch.
Whoa.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Oh man.
And when they're older, they're darker because glands filter out blood. And when there's an active infection, they're inflamed, just like when you palpitate your neck or you're growing and you're like, oh, this really hurts, and then you're having a flare up like everyone, I assume.
Yep.
And then I've seen that in slaughter. You see a lot more abnormalities, whatever.
Yeah.
And again, my head's not that great. And you'll see abscess, right? Abscess doesn't mean the animal's unhealthy. It just, like us and people, when there's isolated infections, it doesn't spread to the rest of the meat. Sometimes it does. USDA vet comes out there, makes a decision. I've seen animals that are jaundiced. I've seen, animals where it's like, oh, this animal broke a rib, and I could see that it's been healed.
Wow.
And then I've seen cancer.
Yeah.
And what happens when you see that stuff?
We so during slaughter, there's always a USDA vet or not vet, inspector on site. And they know what to look for to the point where if it's beyond them, they know it's wrong, but they need to call a vet out.
Okay.
So even if an animal is deemed wholesome, but it has an obvious infection, they're going to do what's called a KISS test on the kidneys, and that's going to test for antibiotic residue, because animals need to be antibiotic free either for 60 or 90 days before slaughter.
Yeah.
That's why when you see old, cold dairy cows, a lot of times they need to be harvested right away because they've been off antibiotics for that long.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the rules are for producing milk. I don't drink that much milk.
Yeah.
Not like when you're a kid and you have a glass of milk at dinner.
But that's I think that's good to know. I don't think a lot of people know that the USDA rep is there during the harvest, because, you hear all these horror stories and it's like, oh, it's terrible, and, the beef industry is terrible, but like, it is very safe.
Yeah.
And even what you do up north, you have
I have an inspector. Yeah.
They have an office there.
Yeah. So there's I don't know how many listeners will find this interesting, but there's a HACCP program, which is part of your food defense, and HACCP stands for Hazardous Analysis Critical Control Points, because there are certain steps in your process that if you don't document, it never happened, that you follow, right? And that is final trimming, because animal hides are caked in shit. So when you trim, you're going to have your seam lines, and you have to physically remove that by, let's say you have a dab of a hair or something that you may not know. You're going to cut underneath that to remove that piece without compromising your knife. and then you're going to dip your knife in 180-degree water and continue. And then you have an antimicrobial intervention. Every piece of meat that's harvested under inspection in America has an antimicrobial intervention. That could be lactic acid at a certain percentage. It could also be vinegar.
Okay.
Like just regular white distilled vinegar. It could be organic. So it's lactic, acetic, and then like chickens, a lot of times it's chlorine.
Yeah.
But it's all mixed at percentage that are deemed wholesome. I use that word a lot. I love working with the USDA. You have a good relationship, and at the same time, it's a double-edged sword because it's like working with like someone who
It's like
maybe
it's like your dad's a cop.
yeah, and then with smoking meats, right? You have Appendix A, you have Appendix B, which are temperature ranges and times you need to hit, and then cooling temperatures and times you also need to hit. With cured or with heat treated, shelf stable, or just shelf stable like salami, and you have available water. So at a point you need to justify the pH with your available water in a certain range to show that it is food safe. You also have a trichinosis control when doing shelf stable, which is freezing for a certain amount of days at a certain time of temperature. And you could achieve Appendix A and available water and pH at different levels based on time and temperature.
There's a lot that goes into curing meats.
Yeah.
A lot.
Speaking of curing meats and all that jazz, we were talking about the hot dog, the Wagyu hot dog.
Hot dog.
Which I do appreciate now.
You got called out.
I got yelled at, but I totally understand it. But yeah, you guys are doing hot dogs right now? What is that process like? Just so, when I'm thinking of hot dogs from like Jack Mountain or from like Wagyu, it's usually from less cows than when you go to buy like an Oscar Mayer wiener at Albertsons, right? So
because we're not a big place. We don't have meat totes coming in with 2,000 pounds of trim.
Yeah.
So it's not lips and assholes. So I'll say that.
That's what I wanted to hear.
And so with Wagyu and particularly, I'm doing an R&D on it, right? Because Wagyu fat melts at a lower temperature, and with making hot dogs, you are tied to temperatures. You are tied with emulsification temperatures. You are tied to, how do you get good coverage in a food safe range once you hit 130 degrees, so you don't dip back down to get without it rendering out. So, and then at the end, when you got your coverage, you need to spike up the temperature to get it, fully cooked. Because a full lower temperature hot dog, you still want it to have the better mouthfeel with coverage. And then right afterwards, smokers, the ones I deal with, will blanch them real quick, or not real quick. It's like a 15-minute water bath. And then it stops that it just shocks it so it doesn't render anymore. So a traditional hot dog, right? So that's Wagyu, which I'm experimenting with now, and I imagine my first batch is going to suck. I will write down my notes meticulously, and then I'll probably reach out to a meat scientist that I know who is a true master butcher and from Germany, and give him my notes, and he'll give me feedback. But like a regular all beef hot dog, you have to have a fat ratio that also can that cannot exceed 30% in your finished product. Okay. So, but a lot of people start off with 30% in their raw materials, knowing that it's going to render out. Starting with 30% in your raw materials, you're probably going to end up with 25 in your finished product. And then, so you start off with beef trim that could be rough cut. I personally am going to par freeze that beef trim to get it cold. and then run it through a 6-blade bowl chopper with ice. And I can't tell you the ratio off the top of my head. I have it written down.
Are you familiar with a bull chopper?
No. What's a bull chopper?
So it's a big bowl, and that could be this big, big, depending on the manufacturer. And I would use a 6-blade configuration, and then it chops the meat at high revolutions. And the tip of the blade, when it strikes the meat in ice, is around 1,000 degrees. And so when you start with, and at that point, you're making it, the proteins and the water bind together. So it becomes one. And when you emulsify, you do not want to go over certain temperature parameters.
Because it'll break.
Yeah.
Separate.
And then when you, and I think, I want to say it's 38 is, I don't know, don't quote me, but there's a low end temperature that's around 38. You don't want to exceed 42, I believe. And then, but if you do exceed that, then you're going to, and that's your recipe, instead of ice, you could use water. And the reason you want to par freeze is because you want to be able to have the time to get that binding. But if you go at a higher emulsification, it's got to be around 62 degrees for the finished product. And you don't want anything between that 40-something degrees and that 62 degrees, because your batter will split. So it's either you got to get it at the lower temperature or the higher temperature. And there's also
back to the Wagyu.
Yeah.
The problem is the fat content is so much higher. It's not like making a regular hot dog.
Yeah.
It's the hot dog science over here.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And with Wagyu fat, that's one thing I'm going to, instead of par freezing, I'm going to probably 100% freeze that fat.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it may get where it's like, oh shit, I don't have good binding at this lower temperature. I'm probably going to do it at a hotter temperature. Another thing with hot dogs too is you want to smoke them the same day, right? If you make your batter and you stuff them the next day, that overnight period is also going to naturally cause it to split. And then you're going to want to get them, our aim is you make it and you smoke them that day. Okay. It's going to get the best quality.
Smoke them and shock them.
Yeah. Smoke them and shock them. Dang, dude. Well, this has been awesome, man. You got any crazy questions that you want to ask?
What's the worst cut you've ever had on your body from butchering?
Oh, for a visual meme.
There you go.
This one wasn't done by me. I was teaching someone how to gut a pig, and first you have to pop the H-bone. And I said, but before you open it, you rinse it. And I was like, oh, you're going to want to wash this shit up here. And they popped the H-bone with my hand in the way, and separated the tendon, and
ouch.
And I had to go through surgery, physical therapy. I was back on the floor within 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then, so that guy was later found to be on crack.
Did you ever get back at him? Did you stab him back?
No, no, he got fired and got hemmed up by his officer and went back. And then, my greatest injury isn't really a cut. I had a 500-pound beef carcass fall on me from 11 feet in the air.
Oh my God!
And that's so I ended up. That's how I got my TBI. Took 6 months of speech therapy to get to where I am.
Wow.
I had to get 3 surgeries in my shoulder because I was laid down face on the ground unconscious, and my right arm was pinned flat against my back with the carcass on it. Oh. So bicep tendon tear, rotator cuff tear, and a labrum tear. So I don't have much cartilage in the shoulder.
Dang.
I also have this one where a hook hit me. You can't really see it because they stitched it up really good. But,
Ow!
But it's right there. I bled a lot. There's a video of it, and I'm laughing in it. But
head wounds bleed a lot.
yeah,
It's dangerous work, man.
oh yeah, and those are all from slaughter.
That's 11 feet in the air.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
A carcass, a beef carcass.
yeah.
Oh, holy moly.
Oh
That
yeah,
scares the shit out of me.
That's terrifying.
I don't like working around rails because of it. I have a little hesitation.
I would
Some
think so.
PTSD, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing is, the beef landed on me, but what hit my head was the 7-pound cast iron hook that was whipped by the force of that hind leg coming down.
A 7-pound cast iron. Wow, bro.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot worse stuff, but I don't think your audience really.
Yeah. We're gonna leave them with that right there, man. We're gonna leave them with that.
Well, I like that finish. That was good.
That was a good
that was
story.
strong.
Yeah, strong.
Strong finish.
Save the best, man. Save the best. Not for you though. Damn, that's wild.
Well,
That's
I gotta
wild,
get up
man.
there. Haven't been to Jack Mountain for a while. Come up there and see you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last time we were there, we saw Seamus and did the whole sausage, and
Salumi.
Yeah. Yep. So that was cool, man. Well, dang, dude. What else? You got anything else to add before we sign it off here, Travis?
Not really.
Yeah. Broke down the whole beef.
Yeah, I'm pretty approachable online. I'm not active that much, but TikTok, Instagram. If anyone, one of the greatest things when I used to have my podcast, The Meat Block, is I got an email from someone recently, and I haven't done the podcast in years, and he opened up his own butcher shop, and apparently he asked me for advice like 5 years ago, and then he sent me an email thanking me, and it was like, that's why I do it.
Yeah,
that's
like,
cool.
And I think,
Really cool.
and the reason I say I'm approachable is because I hate gatekeeping in this industry. I'm fortunate enough to have generations of people teach me. I know things that a lot of people may find interesting, and my industry is dying when it comes to whole carcass. And I've apprenticed people. I've had taken people who don't know anything, and then in a couple years they have management positions.
Wow.
This industry needs to be strong, and with my knowledge, it's shared. That people are having problems with their HACCP program or something like that, I'd be more than happy to walk them through it.
Cool.
And even if people just want to talk about esoteric cuts, or a lot of times what I've experienced in the industry is fatigue or overworked or working on the slaughter floor, how that may affect you mentally. I certainly have trails of that. I'm also, not because of the meat industry, but I'm bipolar. So I have no problem talking to people about that, or how to deal with addiction. You see a lot of that in the slaughter side or in the kitchen side. It's something that I dealt with when I was younger in life, outside of the meat industry.
Okay.
But getting people to understand that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
Cool.
That's really good. Man.
cool.
How does somebody get in touch with you?
American Butcher on TikTok or Instagram.
Okay.
My old podcast was The Meat Block. There's 200 and something episodes about the meat industry, going everything from the Dunning-Kruger effect, imposter syndrome, how to cook a tri-tip, to, how to, the opioid crisis that I used to see in slaughterhouses, because people would pull their backs out and then be hooked to pills.
Wow, man. Yeah, this guy's a wealth of knowledge over here, man. It's cool.
Seen some stuff.
Yeah.
And I also like helping people with their resumes and realizing the skill sets that they have. It is really weird that I wish I could give a class in how people with skills to ask for more money for their value, figure out their value, how to put together a resume, and that there is upward mobility in this industry, right? I started off as a ex-vegetarian working at a slaughterhouse, knocking animals my first day, and I've been in management roles for the last 10 years, and now I'm the director of operations for Jack Mountain Meats. It wasn't easy, but I want people to turn this industry, or turn their job in this industry, into a career. I don't want people, this is hollow ground. So, if you're here, you should 100% be here.
Yeah,
Totally.
man. And the beef industry needs good people like you know, people who know what they're doing and who can utilize these carcasses and help ranchers get the most out of what they need, help the consumer understand what they should be buying, so we can start utilizing the entire animal, and maybe less of it will go to ground, and more of it will go to steaks, and more of it will get utilized, and that's just the overall goal here, you know.
Yeah.
So it's cool, man. I really appreciate you coming on and coming
Absolutely.
down here, dude.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun. So yeah, thanks for
great,
reaching
dude.
out. And
Yeah.
I could sit here for hours and bullshit. So
I know, dude. I mean, go get in touch with this guy, American Butcher, Travis Stockstill. Find him online. Find him on Instagram, TikTok. And if you have those questions, and really, that's a great resource. He's willing to come out and help you and get on the phone with you and help you do whatever you need to move your career forward. And that's a big thing here in the beef industry.
great.
So, yeah, man, we appreciate you. We applaud you. And thanks for coming out,
Oh,
dude.
thank you.
You're a freaking meat dude for sure. This is
Certified.
great, dude. Well, let's sign it off. Thank you again for watching and listening to the Meat Dudes. And we will see you next time. Stay meat curious.
Stay hungry.
Let's go.